Hi, and welcome to your next episode. I wanted to put an episode together to talk about something that weighs a little heavy and something that I haven't spoken about. This week marks Baby Loss Awareness Week here in the UK. So that is a week that is dedicated to raising awareness about pregnancy and baby loss and providing support to grieving families, fostering a real community of remembrance and compassion, culminating in the Wave of Light, where bereaved families light a candle in honour of their babies that they've lost. So for me, baby loss has been in my life personally since December 2023, when I became a bereaved grandparent. And I have mentioned this briefly on social media posts where I say I'm a grandparent to an angel. I have touched on it with my mailing list, but I've never really spoken openly about something so personal. And that is because that's my own personal journey. It also involves my immediate family. And there's elements within that I wish to keep private. But that's not to minimize the loss that I feel as a grandparent. So I wanted to take some time just to kind of talk that through and kind of give an insight into being a bereaved grandparent, grieving, and how that kind of skews your way of being. And I would say, since experiencing the loss, I have changed. I have become a little hardened, a little angry, a little annoyed. Mainly that kind of kind of bubbles up through people, perhaps their ignorance or their insensitivity. And I don't think I'd really thought about it. Well, no, I hadn't thought about it till experiencing the loss of my granddaughter. And I don't think, to be fair, I think there's few and far between people who will get it, understand, be a little compassionate in their sharing of news. And you would think it shouldn't have to be, people shouldn't have to experience that kind of loss to have that compassion, to have that understanding. But it seems all too often that people do, because they don't get it. And I think when you are supporting a child going through a loss, your own grief takes a backseat, and rightly so, because you're there to support, you're there to care. So I felt it's coming up to 2 years in December, like I say, since we lost my granddaughter. And I think the first year and those first anniversaries, so first Mother's Day, first birthday, all those firsts are what kind of governs the grief and how you share it and show it. And last year, part of my kind of grief and working through that, I channeled it into raising money for one of the charities that supported my daughter and son-in-law. and that was Remember My Baby. So Remember My Baby is a charity that provides remembrance photography for families. And at a time when you're going through something so devastating as a baby loss, the last thing, or maybe people do think, is having photographs taken. And at that time when you're going through that unimaginable pain, knowing that there's charities that provide memory boxes and remembrance photography, it's just what you need in those moments, because you think you know what to do. You think you know how to prepare going into hospital, and knowing that you're going to come out of hospital without a baby. It is unimaginable. But it just seems that as time goes by, people think that you kind of get over that initial upset. And although I don't get as upset as what I have done previously, it still hurts. Of course it does. And I suppose one thing that comes up time and time again, well, occasionally, is when there's pregnancy announcements and that kind of pinch of like hurt that doesn't go away. That will always be there. And how some people, I think initially people were very supportive. You know, what can we do to support you? What can we do? And that kind of like fades away as life goes on, and rightly so. It does. And people want to share the news, and then there'll be a snapshot of a newborn, say pregnancy announcements, people coming in to show their baby, and it's those little pinches, a little reminder that takes you back. And like I say, that's not going to go away. That will always be there. So it's like, how do you go through life riding those waves? You know, I laugh, I joke, but I still have those quiet moments of contemplation. The what ifs, the maybes, a sense of wondering. But fundamentally, I have changed. I have less tolerance for people's I just have less tolerance for people. Let's just put it there. I have less tolerance for people. You know, I don't feel the need to conform even more so. I don't feel the need to play the game. Almost like my life has changed and I'm not the same person as what I was. So therefore, then I'm not going to go back and fit into a box and be that conformist and be the person that claps on demand. If I don't feel the need to perform, I won't perform. I no longer feel that need. And I know that people may be well-meaning, and you know, you could have like so at work you have colleagues that, you know, someone's gone off on maternity and then they suddenly come in with the baby. You know, I spoke to one of my managers and said, I'd just like the heads up, just so I can prepare myself a little more. I don't like to be door stopped. And that happened twice, 3 times, door stopped. Okay, I get that time moves on in that respect, but my loss is still very apparent. And yet I have colleagues who are very considerate, who put me in the picture. I prefer to be put in the picture so I can make up my own mind about whether I wish to be there or not. When that choice is taken away, I feel a little powerless, and it magnifies that insensitivity from other people that I know. Okay. I'm very aware that I haven't shared fully about the loss of my granddaughter, but there's key people that do know. Key people in my own family that know, and key people within my working relationship that know. So those key people have been chosen for me to share. So in some respects, I'd want the same kind of respect to come back. And all too often it doesn't. And that includes my family. You know, initially it's all this kind of, oh, that's shock. I can't believe this has happened. Da, 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 da. How's your daughter? How's she coping? Da, da, da. And all of this. Talk. And when you're in the height of that immense grief and heaviness, that's not what you need to hear. The questions, the whys, I can't believe it, the disbelief, and from my point of view, you don't need that then. You need the practical. You need, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything I can take away the day-to-day? Can I lighten your load a little bit? Can I take something off your plate? That would have been far more helpful than the disbelief, the shock. This, asking all these questions that I didn't have the answers to. So I found that because there was that kind of like disjoint, I suppose that at the time I couldn't necessarily explain what it was that I wanted or needed. I just hoped that someone would see, that somebody would help me out with the younger two, lighten my load a little bit, because I was carrying so much. And I remember a few months after we'd lost my granddaughter, that a family member was quite aggrieved because I hadn't shared the loss immediately with them. Now, at the time, my daughter only wanted to share details about the loss with a select few people. That was how she wanted to gain some control over the situation. Okay? So I respected her wishes. I shared with a few people what had happened. You know, what could I do to help her? So I did that for her. And like I say, a few months later, this family member had heard from another family member, and they were really annoyed that I hadn't shared it with them. I was like, but you're missing the point. It wasn't about you. It wasn't about me. It was about my daughter and what she wanted. My thoughts and feelings didn't come into the equation, and neither should yours, but you're taking it very personally because you feel like you have a right to know the detail, but you had no right. It was never about you. You're making it about you. You're missing the point. It's about you. It's about the loss. But you're so caught up in feeling aggrieved because now we have got a problem. And equally, then you have that. And I suppose, and I'll come back to obviously my past experiences with baby loss and stillbirth. So in doing that, and people not having that kind of awareness or that kind of, okay, so we've lost her, you know this, and you haven't checked in with me or her, and you think we're going to be okay? No, because those questions, those queries, and those at the start, okay, once that subsides a little and life is starting to carry on, what then? What are you offering up? And it's radio silence. I kid you not. Radio silence. And then on the flip side of that, so I know that when I was pregnant with my eldest, so almost 30 years ago, I knew someone who was pregnant at the same time as me, and we had a similar due date around the same time. And she lost her son. She went full term and lost her son. He was stillborn. And I remember at that time feeling immense guilt because I was having my first child, as she was. I think she knew that she was having a boy as well. I didn't know whether I was having a boy or a girl. So I was so joyous because, you know, I was about to have my first child. And she went into labour before I had my daughter. So I knew that her son was stillborn. And I remember feeling so much guilt, so much shame for being happy that I was about to have my daughter, child at the time, that I couldn't really hold it or kind of work through it or even acknowledge it in some respects. And I was just quiet. Just didn't say anything because I felt that guilt and that shame. And in hindsight, looking back, oh my gosh, I had no idea what she was going through because I'd never experienced anything like that. And now I have. I still have that kind of shame because I'm not doing enough and not kind of acknowledging. And since then, personally, I know somebody else whose child has experienced baby loss. And again, I was silent because I just didn't know what to say. I just didn't know. And by not knowing, being silent is just so cruel. It's just so cruel. Because although they've lost a baby, they're still a mother. They're still a parent. They still carried that child. And that's why it's so hard when you are going through life and people don't acknowledge or don't actually ask. It's the silence, you see. It's the silence that is so big and an echo chamber that by not saying anything and then just assuming that you can then put a photo of someone's child who you don't even know in front of your face and expect you to be okay. But well, you didn't ask. And no, I don't want to see the photo. And that's not even like, that may be to do with the loss. It may not be, but I'm just not interested, to be fair. I don't want to. And then it's always that then it feels awkward for me because I've said, I walk away. I walk away because I don't want to see the photo. And it's that kind of joyful celebration. Yes, celebrate the birth of your child, your healthy pregnancy. You've got a wonderful bundle of joy. Once I get it. And I don't begrudge anybody that feeling. But it just becomes so apparent that unless you've experienced loss, you have no idea. And it's that hurts. So with an awareness week like Baby Loss Week, it can stir up a lot, especially obviously when we're talking about pregnancy loss, from early loss to loss shortly before or after birth. And each of those different types of loss stir up so many different types of feeling. And those that have experienced loss, it's not just an awareness week because it never leaves. It's always there. And it's just for people to have that awareness of it. I mean, I'm not sure of the statistics, and I haven't wrote them down, but there is a high proportion of women who have experienced loss from early right through to shortly before or after birth. And that's a lot. And all too often, we don't talk about it, or we don't talk about it. I think an awareness week is good for kind of building that awareness, but we don't talk about it a lot. And it's almost that kind of like, it's the kind of, like I say, it's the silence. It's in the corners of the room, people, it's that kind of like darkness over there that people don't really want to invite that darkness in. But that's how we shine a light on it, because ultimately it impacts so many people. And there's lots of support for bereaved parents, and there is support for bereaved grandparents. And I know that when in the first few weeks after losing my granddaughter, I was at a loss about how I could support my own daughter. I really struggled because I didn't know. As a parent, you want to fix everything, don't you? You want to make everything better. But this was not, and it wasn't like I wanted to do that, because I knew that I couldn't. And having that awareness of your own limitations is hard. So I rang helplines, I went to the library, I read books. Where do I go here? At what point do I need to be concerned about my daughter? Because I was just at a loss for what I could do. And we rode those waves, those deep, dark days, and it was heavy. And then it was difficult because my daughter was with me initially, and then she wasn't. So I couldn't see, I couldn't do. And it's been a journey for over the last, it's coming up to 2 years. So when we had the first Mother's Day, that was horrendously hard, because that would have been around my granddaughter's due date. And then the second Mother's Day, equally as hard. And that threw up another set of difficulties. So my main focus on Mother's Day this year was my daughter and how she experienced Mother's Day. It was less about me as a mother, it's about her. And yet then I had that kind of awareness, maybe, that my own mother had a problem with the fact that I didn't acknowledge her, yet I didn't even want to be acknowledged because it was all about my daughter. Yet my mother, who is a great grandmother, didn't have that awareness of her own granddaughter and how hard it would be for her. But then I never spoke about that, because my life is very much focused on my immediate circle, which is my children and my grandchild. I'm not seeing beyond that, because they're my main focus, and making sure that they're okay. Yet I don't seem to have the same light shining on me, or my parents checking in with me to see if I'm okay, supporting my daughter, which is difficult. And it can be quite hard, I'll be honest. But I haven't got that. And I grieved that a long time ago. And that was a long time ago. I came to that realization that my parents just aren't like other people's parents. And that's okay, because my focus is being the type of parent that I would have needed. And my focus on being the type of grandparent that I think You should be. And even though I had no role model, you could say, in that respect, I know what it feels like, and that's what I'm going by. So in my parenting, I try to be present, and I say to my children, I don't always get it right, but I do apologize if I've got it wrong. And more so over the last couple of years, I've been very, very reflective on when I have cocked up, when I have got it wrong. I will say that when I'm a bit, when I lose the plot and go crazy. Sometimes it is justified, and I will say that as well. Sometimes it is justified, sometimes it's not. Sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I was a little harsh then, and then go back and apologize. I'm all for that reflection. And I think that's really fundamental to the relationship I have with my children. I'll call them out for their BS behavior. I will call myself out for my BS behavior. And it's just growth. And I think as time goes by, I'm getting better at that. And that can only be a good thing, because I see the lack that I've got that surrounds me. And I wouldn't want that for my children. I want to be that annoying parent for the right reason. Annoying because I care too much. Can you care too much? Can you want what's best for them too much? Maybe. Because it's that fine line between living vicariously through them and also encouraging them. And I like to think I encourage them to have that kind of growth mindset. But I also don't want to railroad them into, oh, do this, do this. But when they start making decisions for themselves, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to sit back and watch this then, aren't I? Which is fine. It's about me kind of loosening the reins a little bit. I do get that as well. But I digress. So, and obviously, being a parent, so I was a young parent. So I was 19 when I was pregnant. I had my daughter just shy of turning 20. And being a young parent came with its challenges. I suppose the biggest challenge was then raising my child as a single parent, and then going on subsequently to raise my twins as a single parent. And I realized I haven't got a good support system. I haven't got one at all, really. Comes down to me, and that's not me being, it's not me getting the violins out. It's not me being, but I haven't got a good support system. It's pretty negligible. I just haven't. So it has come down to me, and I do have some good friends, and I'm always very mindful that they have their own families and their own lives. So my support system is very limited, and going through this loss has just widened that gulf. They haven't been there, and they continue not to be there. And that's further creates that distance. And I don't know how you kind of come back from that. And I have shared with some wider family, and still that hasn't changed anything. And I'm like, it's a pretty hard line to take, but hey, that's your choice. It's your choice. This is mine. And like I say, my main concern is my immediate family. They're the ones that I'm with. They're the ones that matter. They're the ones that are going forwards, carrying a bit of this legacy. So it's that kind of bridge between past and future. I can keep revisiting the past and, going over situations and circumstances and feeling aggrieved because I don't have supportive parents. I have to just crack on and be a supportive parent for mine. And I'm more invested in creating that than what I am enumerating over the past, because that's past, can't change. I'm not pining for it, but I'm very much thinking about how I can future-proof the future going forwards and how things can be different despite, in spite, despite. and that's how it is. So from what I started this episode by talking about the significance of Baby Loss Awareness Week and how having conversations can ease the heaviness. Acknowledging people's loss is fundamental in being supportive. Asking what people need is even better. Ask the question, what do you need from me? What can I do for you? What would you like me to do? How can I take something off your plate? Would go down a treat. Yeah, and have conversations. I think that is just so important. So as we're coming to the end of Baby Loss Awareness Week, that signifies the end is the wave of light. And that is tomorrow evening, I believe, at 7 p.m, where you can light a candle in honor of your babies that you've lost. The light that burns on, shines on, who is very much a part of you and your lives. I'm a firm believer, and I say all the time, that energy doesn't die, that your babies are still very much part of you and your lives. However you choose to remember is your choice. Much like grief is your own. There's no right or wrong way. This is something I always said to my daughter. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. Your way is right for you. It doesn't matter how that compares to other people. Same as how you choose to remember, whether it's by lighting a candle or having a quiet moment or listening to a song or going out dancing or partying or whatever you need in that moment is right for you. Don't let anybody tell you different from that as well. There's no right or wrong way. There's your way. And that's all that matters.